You're listening to The Legal Edge, where we bring you behind the scenes of law firm growth. I'm your host, Rob Rosasco, and today our guest is one of the most respected voices in the business of law, Tim Corcoran. As a consultant, speaker, and former law firm executive, Tim helps firms rethink their models, align their operations, and unlock their profitability. Tim, I'm really thrilled to have you here. Thanks.
Well, I'm happy to be invited on. Thanks for having me.
Tim, one of the things I respect most about your work is your ability to challenge the traditional way that most law firms operate. So let's start there. What do you think is broken in the current law firm model, and where do you think most law firms should be looking for innovation?
Well, where do you even start? I don't know that the law firm model is completely broken, as some pundits would have you believe. Certainly, there are some extraordinarily ineffective ways that law firms tend to operate and do so to their own detriment, right? The biggest example is the billable hour model. It's always been ignored because, we need to bill hours even if clients don't like it, under the impression that somehow clients demand other pricing approaches because the billable hours is bad for them. Well, just as many law firms want the billable hour. The problem is it always hurts the law firm more than it hurts anyone else. And the reason is very simple. As experienced thought leaders, lawyers become experienced over time. And when they can only monetize their experience by billing by the hour, they have to fabricate a scenario in which every matter is bespoke. I've never done this before. I'm ranked in the legal directories for being the best in the world, or in the top 5 or top 10 or top band of our geography as being the best in the world. But I couldn't tell you what this matter will look like. I couldn't tell you what it would cost. And it's really not because they're not smart. They're brilliant. It's because they're boxed into this model where the only way to make money and a handsome income is to keep pretending it's new to them. And that's a glaring example.
Okay.
Another that I run into quite often is this notion of, well, I'm a smart lawyer, therefore I must be a good manager of people and a good leader of a firm. And those are often not true. Doesn't mean that you can't be an excellent manager or an excellent leader as a lawyer, but the two are not the same. And it's okay, by the way, as an owner of a law firm, if the partners say, yeah, I might be a terrible manager, but it's my firm. I'm going to run it the way I want. Awesome. Cool. As long as you acknowledge that, it's your business. Do whatever you want. But it may create some challenges for you. But it's the not knowing and the assumption that because I went to law school, I can do all these other things well. I think that's a bit of a challenge.
Okay. Yeah. And, as a layperson, even one that, I've been involved in the legal industry for 25, 27 years. I never really considered that, never looked at it from that perspective. So I'm sure there's plenty of attorneys that don't either. So what do you see as the biggest obstacle to change?
Well, there's another recurring headline about lawyers being resistant to change. I don't find that true at all. I think lawyers can be extraordinarily innovative and creative in the practice of law, the delivery of legal services. They're always coming up with creative solutions. They're doing research and they're applying ideas from one fact pattern to a completely different one to the benefit of their clients. The challenge is it's the client's risk, not theirs.
Right.
But when it comes to their own business, they have a high intolerance for risk, right? Almost certain. If you're a full-time practicing lawyer, you most likely have a risk aversion level that's much higher than the average population. Dr. Larry Richard, a great guy out of Philadelphia, he's been doing sort of the personality of lawyers for a long time. And that's one of the things that comes through every single time. They're more risk averse than the average population. And so therefore, change is challenging, particularly when what they're changing to or what they're being urged to change to doesn't have a roadmap. They haven't seen other firms do it.
Right.
Which is why those of us who have spent time on the other side of the table selling services and products to law firms, one of the most common things we hear is, who else is doing this? Because there's safety in numbers. I may not be capable of assessing the situation, but if 10 other firms that I hate, but I respect, or 10 other peer firms that I interact with regularly, if they're doing it, well, okay, it must not be highly risky. And so I think that risk aversion is the greatest challenge. But with this upheaval in this marketplace, which has been going on now for a good 15 years and is not slowing down, in fact, it's accelerating, there is a roadmap. Just because a law firm is different than a business doesn't mean it's not subject to the same economic forces. And so there is very much a roadmap of what happens to incumbents in a disrupted market, what they do, what are their actions, how do they try to prevent intrusions from new entrants, put up barriers to entry. Then what do those who are providing innovation do? How do they pave the way, and how do they actually give a great roadmap to the incumbents? It's tried and true in every industry. And so the lessons there are law firms need to look not only beyond their own firm to other firms, but also outside the firms to what innovative organizations that are providing services to the legal community and to buyers of legal services, what are they doing and what are they doing differently? Because it turns out there's some pretty good ideas out there that would benefit law firms a great deal.
Do you find many law firm managers, law firm owners subscribe to that notion? I'm assuming it's something you use when chatting with law firm executives about what it is that you do. Do you find them receptive to that line of thinking?
Well, they certainly find it comforting that I've talked to hundreds of law firms, and in the particular niche areas in which I prefer to spend my time, I have a wealth of knowledge built up over decades. And it's very comforting to them when I say a few things and they go, wow, it's like you've been sitting in our boardroom listening to our issues. And I don't mean to minimize the distinctions between law firms. They're all very different and unique, and they have their own cultures, but there's a lot of recurring patterns.
Yeah.
In the same way that an excellent lawyer sees the same patterns over and over again and is equipped to advise his or her client that, here's what this fact pattern looks like, and here are some of the alternatives to addressing it. I see the same things.
Right.
And so when I can help them understand that others have successfully navigated this rocky issue they're dealing with, they usually find comfort in that.
Okay.
Now, do they get as innovative as I'd like them to be? Not necessarily. And that's in part cultural, but it's also, in addition to risk aversion, a lot of locked in incentives. There's an economic interest in maintaining the status quo. And that's where I spend a lot of my time lately. And that's addressing partner incentives that are not in the best interest of the firm.
Right. Which I think we'll get to in a few minutes. But do you see a consistent theme in terms of geography, practice areas, size of the firm, in which the firm and the people that run the firm are more receptive to what it is you're sharing now as compared to those who are not, or is it random?
Yeah, it's absolutely the right question. I get this everywhere I go. If I'm giving a talk in London or in Sydney, Australia, or Chicago, or Austin, Texas, they always say, well, our markets are a little bit different. Our clients are a little bit different, but I'm sure these ideas of what's going on, these disruptions are happening elsewhere, but we don't necessarily see it here. But they always say, but who is getting it right? Where is it right? And sometimes the people in London will say, well, we know the Australian market is a little bit ahead, or the US market's ahead. Australia will say, well, obviously we're following the US. There is no pattern.
Okay.
There is a lot more money being spent by the larger firms to dabble in all sorts of innovative ideas, and that's a good thing. Dabbling's not so good because it's a little bit opportunistic and random. When a client demands something, they look into it, but they're not really coming at it with a proactive strategy for managing innovation and the delivery of legal services, but they're trying.
Right.
The smaller firms are struggling with the notion of how do we invest for innovation, but also not increase our cost base and lower our incomes. I had one partner ask me, well, how can I both have associates and invest in AI? Isn't it one or the other? Which is a really simplistic and frankly wrong way of looking at things.
Yeah.
AI can actually be a fantastic tool to provide training and guidance to associates when the partners either don't have the time or simply won't make the time to do that. And so
Right.
it could be a symbiotic relationship. So what I see most is pockets of innovation in any kind of firm, any size of firm, any practice. And there once was a time when I could say, well, I see that happening in litigation, but it's not yet in transactions. Not a single practice area that I've seen in recent years that is not being disrupted and benefiting from innovations somewhere.
Right. Okay. I'm sure you could probably talk for hours about case studies and firms you've helped evolve, but is there a brief story you could share about a firm that you helped overcome an issue they were having, helping them innovate, helping them evolve?
Yeah. So I'll use one that's related to changing partner incentives because it's in the last couple of years and it's had a pretty dramatic impact. But I will say this, a lot of firms I work with on compensation don't want anyone to know that they're addressing compensation. They don't want me to tell anyone the firm name or size or even, where in the country. And they also surprisingly keep some of it quiet in the firm as well, when in fact it should be the thing that they lead with their internal organization as well as in their recruiting process. It's a recurring pattern, but we had a pretty acute situation where a firm of long standing that was in a second and moving to the third generation. So the second generation remembers learning at the knee of the founders, but the founders are no longer in the picture. And this generation, the second generation, they are excellent. They've been around a long time. But this next generation, the third generation, is at the point where they're starting to step into the management roles and take prominence, and they're being crowded out. The second generation senior people just aren't stepping off the stage. And look, it's not for me or for you or for these middle-aged partners to tell the older partners it's time to retire. That's not what we're talking about. It's about hoarding the credit, hoarding the relationships with those clients, not leveraging the work, not sharing it, not ensuring a safe path to succession.
Mhm.
And it was causing people to leave the firm who had another 30 years to go and were doing a fantastic job building a book of business. And it was also limiting their recruiting. And they all liked each other. They just could not figure out why this was happening. And long story short, we analyzed their incentives and we said, you have, no matter what your culture says, and you literally have a plaque on the wall in your main conference room talking about your firm values, your incentive plan could not be more self-interested. It's absolutely engineered for partners to keep a hold of all the work they win, do as much as they can, and only delegate when they're at their end of their rope, and keep that credit forever and not share it. And they're stunned by that because they mean to do the right things. And there's always someone or multiple people in a law firm who will step outside what's in their own economic self-interest and share credit and delegate work and help mentor the associates, even though there's no pay for that, or will serve in management roles. And so that's always happening. But there were a number of pockets where they were just hoarding that. And once we explained that with a simple tweak, and I say simple, it took a while, but the way to make the most money was to be the most selfish. And we simply shifted it. And we said the way to make the most money is to do what's in the firm's long-term best interest.
Yep.
Period. And everything emanated from that. And once everyone understood that we could stage things and phase things so that there was not going to be this immediate shifting of income from one to the other, but over time we would migrate to this end state that they wanted. Once they all understood that, they were all very much on board with supporting the values in a way that they had not before.
Interesting.
It was a good storyline, and it really did help them position for better recruiting, and it retained the people who were the ones calling me in saying, do something or we're out.
And I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, the application of what you were just talking about was considerably more comprehensive, more difficult than the way that it just sounded. But to me, it sounds so simple.
Yeah, it's a mindset shift. I mean, the math is important. Like when you're
Yeah.
working in a compensation plan, there's profit and financial metrics and other things. Yeah, there's some complexity there, of course. But the biggest part is saying, if you believe these values as owners, and it's not for me to tell you what your values are, or even
Right.
give you a laundry list of what other good, notable firms care about. As owners, look, if you want a culture where you hate each other, but you think that's the way to make the most money, or that's the way you want to live, awesome. I'll help you understand if your incentives are furthering that or hindering that. But if you say we want to collaborate, we want to cross-sell, we want to have good succession planning, we want to bring in our young people and bring them up through the ranks. If you want to do that, let's talk about the incentives that further that aim. As simple as helping them understand there's a lot of different ways to live your values, but right now you're living very few of them.
Okay.
So if we can broaden that and start living your values differently, some of you who are making a lot of money don't have to make any less, but the calculation on the piece of paper showing you how you made that money will differ. And that's what
Right.
sets you up as a firm for the future.
So with the benefit of hindsight, how long ago was this? And with the benefit of hindsight, I mean, they're moving in a positive direction now.
They are. Yeah, it was within the last few years. And the biggest risk was they already lost a couple of good rainmakers, 40-something partners who had years and years ahead of them, and they just couldn't stick around. They stayed. There was a small cabal of them, and they stayed. And
Okay.
they also are starting to recruit some good people because they recognize that someone coming in who knows they have a book of business that can be valued doesn't want to walk in the door and suddenly be at the bottom of the comp ladder, because that's what fits their model, but not what matches the market value of their book of business coming in.
Right. Okay. Very good. So now let's talk numbers. There are far too many firms that track surface level stats or simply don't track numbers at all. What do you think law firm leaders should be measuring to truly understand the health of their business?
Yeah, this is what's crazy is these lawyers who are intolerant of risk are willing to go work in a law firm and be owners of a business, which is a scary proposition. You
It
know
is.
it, I know it.
Yep.
It's hard to do, which is why, of course, joining a big firm with a big global brand is really not very risky, other than the fact that you better hit the production numbers expected to stick around. But launching your own solo firm or a handful of you jumping ship from a mid-sized firm to start your own, that's a very scary proposition. And the mentality of people who are willing to do that recognize that as owners, we've got to do a lot of things right. But the bigger the firm gets, or the more successful the firm gets, even if it's a smaller firm, the more they focus on production only, inputs only. And so what you get is this machine. If there's high demand for the services the firm chooses to offer, then all they need to keep doing is practicing law, working really hard, generating hours, and the money will come in. And that's great. Except the challenge is that if they are not diversified, they're going to hit business cycles where, practice A, B, and C are all, at the peak at the same time. Well, if they don't have any counter-cyclical practices, they're going to plummet. Also, if they don't think about what it means to grow the next generation, if we don't have any associates, then your partners are going to do the work. Well, if that's your choice, cool. That's a business choice. But if every other competitor can leverage some of this work and delegates to associates and you choose to keep the partners busy, well, that's a pricing challenge. You're now not competitive on pricing. So one of two things happens. You keep trying to convince the client that they should overspend for what they know they can get across the street, or you have to do the work at junior lawyer rates, even though you are a partner, which dilutes the value that you bring economically to the table. Mm-hmm. And so it's thinking about how to be an owner and not a highly paid employee. So I think the advent of the non-equity partner, it's been around a long time, the income partner, non-equity partner, this role is growing in prominence. And I think that's by and large a good thing. Why? Because it used to be 8 years in, maybe 10 years. If you didn't commit a felony in the lobby, you know what? You're going to make partner. And that's great. Everyone wants to be a partner. But the challenge is you can't have everyone become a partner. Not everyone's contributing in the same way. And when you get involved in this merry-go-round of everyone's going to make more money every year, it's not too long before you get some people who are good people, who are great contributors, but they're just not ownership material. And yet their compensation far outweighs the value they bring to the table. Yeah. And so now you get the kind of calls that I get, which is, well, Tim, we're unhappy with the subsidy going on. These people over here are pissed off for subsidizing those others. And 3 years later, that conversation flips. That's the part of the challenge is I think if they understand that they're owners of a business and they will do some things that are good for the business, even though it isn't just going to tie back to billable hours or cash in the door. Mm-hmm. So metrics, I think they should focus on matter profitability, right? We focus on firm profitability, or we divide that by the number of partners and we call it profits per partner as if somehow that's a meaningful differentiator. It's a derived number. And so in the published rankings from the publications we all know and love and respect, if I lose a partner on December 31st, my denominator gets smaller, so my PPP goes up. If I hire someone on January 1st, same revenue I'm reporting, but now my denominator is higher, my PPP goes down.
Right.
Does that fundamentally change the economic health of the firm? No. So profitability at the firm level is good, but matter profitability is where it's at. And I don't mean profitability used as this sort of weapon saying, geez, Rob, your matters aren't as profitable as mine, and so you can't make as much. It's a diagnostic. Like any business, you want to understand the profit contributions of your service lines, and where you're not getting higher margin, you wonder what we can do differently. Delivery of the service, how we source the clients, whether or not our price is right. All those things are factors. You got a lot of levers, but when you're only focused on how many hours can we bill at the highest rate possible to anyone who will take our call, it limits you, right? Yeah. So you need to look at matter profitability. You need to look at retention rates. Are we keeping our clients? Mm-hmm. How about sort of your client growth rates? Meaning, are we cross-selling within a client? Because the more sticky we are, the more practices that work with our firm, the less likely one decision maker on either side leaving is going to impact and decimate the whole relationship. And finally, I'd look at things like realization rates. There's a couple different versions of that. Is it rate realization? Is it our billing realization, which is what we actually bill from what we worked? Is it collection realization? We send out an invoice. How much do we actually get paid? It's all of those. And the reason we look at all of those is because there are different diagnostics. I might have the wrong price, and therefore I'm always discounting. To me, that's a management issue. If you demand that your lawyers over a bill and always have to write it down, it's wasted time because you never should expect that revenue in the first place. So that's a very different analysis than someone who can't budget very well and keeps telling the client it's $1.5 million and ends up being $3.5 million. Well, low realization because of dissatisfaction and surprise. And so a different diagnostic. So realization rates help us understand what we expected to earn and what we actually earned. And let's understand why those aren't the same and very, very different reasons depending on what you're looking at.
Okay. So on average, just the 3 or 4 metrics you just threw out there, mid-sized firms, 15 attorneys to 100 attorneys, how many of them as a percentage, roughly, just off the top of your head, how many of them as a percentage do you think track metrics like that?
They all track billable hours. Some will track matter profitability. It's growing in prominence, but they're not doing it in a way that provides battlefield information to partners who need to make decisions.
Right.
I would say very few track client retention and cross-selling.
Okay.
They have all of the point of sale information, but they can't directly tie it back to something that someone has done and give credit for, because unless it happened, like a billable hour that was done, it has risk. I can't reward you for taking actions such as running a client team and mentoring people to try to cross-sell and manage the relationship, because those are fungible, hard to define. It's subjective. Hey, billable hours, as long as you're billing a lot. So most firms track production metrics. They don't really track those outcomes. Like, are we keeping these clients? Are they happy? And are we cross-selling and making them stickier, making them institutionalized? The more we can do with them, the better. Very few are doing that.
Okay. And in doing that, not only does it mess with compensation, it also potentially increases a repeatable activity. So if you do it well, you'll do it again and continue to do it well.
Yeah. And that's one of the tactics that I share with marketers and BD folks. When you're trying to get other lawyers to take notice of something good happening in one pocket of the firm, rather than management scolding partners for doing something wrong, let's celebrate who's doing something right. You've innovated, developed an inefficient process to deliver something that the clients were writing down anyway, or maybe used AI for part of your legal analysis and saved some time, kept the price down, maybe allowed you to flat fee something, which can be immensely profitable. And you have a pattern for how you did that. We identified a problem or 2 or 3. We applied some solutions. We found the right tool to help us and we tackled it. We priced it differently. And now we're very successful. It's that sort of success story that I tell the marketers internally. You need to have a regular bulletin of these things because lawyers are very much follow the leader. And I mean, that's not a negative. That means if you're doing something well, I want to learn from it. I don't want to make the same mistakes. So they'll look over the hedge and they'll say, hey, what are they doing over there? And so rather than list, if you got 38 lawyers, rank them every month and 1 through 38 on something, focus on the top 10 who are doing it right and grab a couple of anecdotes for why they're doing it that way and what success they're gaining from doing it the right way. And others will start to catch on and hopefully follow, because you can't just guilt them into doing it.
No. A couple of minutes ago, you mentioned compensating attorneys for those things that aren't necessarily tied directly to billable hours, instituting an innovative method of doing something, whatever the case might be. Talk a little bit about aligning compensation with those kinds of things, with performance that doesn't necessarily tie back to billable hours.
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with values. And it may sound like some sort of warm and fuzzy group hug, new agey kind of thing. And I'm a finance guy. So when I say it's values, what I really mean is foundationally, how do we want to run this business as a group of owners? What do we care about? If we want to be, as one GC friend of mine says, a hotel for lawyers where we all do our own thing, that's a business choice independently, but with the same logo, that's their choice to make. Others may say, well, that doesn't really benefit us. We actually want to come together because it's risk aversion strategy. We have multiple services, we have multiple practices, maybe even multiple offices, and that is a hedging strategy against economic downturns, which are inevitable. And so if we're going to do that, then we need to make this whole firm hum. And so ideas like we want everyone to succeed, we want to collaborate, we need to make sure that the junior people have opportunities to keep busy and hit their bonuses. And we want to make sure that we're cross-selling and giving someone who's maybe not a good rainmaker, but they're great at managing the client relationship. They've got an opportunity to step up and shine. And we also need to manage the firm, manage the practice. We need to mentor and coach, and we need people to recruit. All of those things they say we value. But when I look at the comp plans, it's really what are your billable hours or the cash that comes in from those billable hours? And what's your origination credit or responsible credit or some other derivative of I helped sell this client? Those two dominate. So incentives that tie back to those values. Okay, well, if you want to encourage people to step up and manage and mentor and do those things, well, then let's see if we can apply some incentives to them. And the first reaction I get is, well, Tim, you can't possibly measure the effectiveness of someone who's mentoring. Well, turns out just because law firms call it intangible, because compared to a billable hour that happened last year, yeah, it's a little more subjective, but it's not completely without metrics. So for example, do you have a checklist of what a mentor should be doing? Are they following that checklist? Are they meeting with their mentees? Can't tell you how many firms have a mentoring program that either isn't written or the only thing written is how we assign mentees and mentors to each other, but there's no plan. You don't have to meet weekly. You can meet whenever you want. Are you there to help them with their legal work? Are you there to help them navigate thorny issues and relationships with other partners? Are you running interference for them? Or you're a bystander just coaching them? Whatever the rules are, put it on a piece of paper. Are they at least following the mechanics? And then you could also get into the financials. What are our write-downs for the people that have been mentored well and starting to catch on that there's a different way to approach this, or you should ask better questions when you're getting the assignment so you don't have to go back in 3 and 4 and 5 drafts. Those are the kinds of things you say, oh, wait a minute, we can actually see the economic benefits from good mentoring. And so it's things like that, whether it's managing a practice group, whether it's getting credit for serving as a client manager or managing the team delivering the work, even if you aren't getting all the hours yourself. Those are the sorts of things that are usually invisible because they're not tracked by billable hours or origination credit.
Thank you. Let's move on to marketing. The one place where I see law firms often fall short is they treat marketing like a separate arm of the business, as opposed to a strategic driver within the firm for growth. How do you coach law firms to integrate marketing into their overall growth strategy or their broader growth strategy?
Well, Rob, I know you've run businesses that help develop websites for law firms. My team launched what I believe is the first dedicated company to law firm website development back in the 90s at the dawn of the commercial internet. And you know who our biggest competition was?
Who's that?
It was not the big ad agencies or marketing agencies servicing other businesses. It was the 13-year-old son or daughter of one of the partners who said, they've got a computer. They're really good at this stuff. And we thought, oh my goodness, you're missing the whole point. Or we had in those early days, librarians who were accustomed to these text-based browsers to search for legal documents were saying, well, we're the keeper of the internet, so we'll decide what the website should be.
Yep.
And then, of course, we got the spinning globes and the flashing buttons and all that kind of stuff of the early first wave of the internet. And the biggest challenge was lawyers said, we've done it. It's done. We have a page. Mission accomplished. And they missed the whole point that just because you have a page on the website or on the internet doesn't mean that people are going to see it, right? It's like printing a brochure and saying it's in the lobby. If any of our prospective clients anywhere in the world want to learn about us, have them drive to our office, come to the lobby, park, maybe we'll validate, and then you can get the brochure and go back and study us. The idea is that law firms have to really think about marketing as integral to their strategy. You have a strategy, you have budget applied to making that strategy happen. It really needs to feed the marketing expenditures. And I think that's one of the great missed opportunities. First of all, most law firms don't have a written strategy. So I'm not pretending that you need some 3-inch thick 3-ring binder. But if you have some set of strategic priorities, simple rubric, like for example, We don't necessarily want to grow in size, but we will listen if a complementary practice becomes available in one of the towns or cities in which we operate. Okay, so softly opportunistic, right? But every call you get from a partner says, I got a big book and this practice has no correlation with your client base and we don't operate in any of the cities you operate, but we want to come talk to you and have you, take us on board. And we say, great, bring them in. Well, when you're too opportunistic and you just take any call, well, that's not a strategy, right? And if you say, look, there's some complementary services we have, and there's a reason we have this set of services. It's not just for risk mitigation. If a client needs A, they probably need B, and they probably need C, and they probably need D. Now, not always, but at least there's a probability that we can cross-sell and help them through the whole supply chain of legal needs. And so having sort of a focus on, well, what are the things we're trying to accomplish? Are we trying to get more of the big clients? Are we trying to get more of the profitable clients? Are we trying to get into growth areas where maybe over the next 10 years, it's a huge boom? Are we trying to manage a very mature market where we're competing with everyone? And of course, they've all got to learn the lesson that marketing is not the same as business development.
Expound on that for a minute. And I've heard that phrase before. I am curious to hear your thoughts.
I'm sure people could argue about this forever. I boil it down to this very simple concept. Marketing is creating awareness and visibility of the firm, of the brand, of the services we offer, possibly even of the individual lawyers, but awareness and visibility. It creates awareness so you get in what's called the consideration set. A client or prospective client that says, I have a need, you are in that consideration set of firms they may choose to call on. How do you get there? It could be a variety of ways, word of mouth, of course, referrals, et cetera, but it could be through marketing. You've created an impression of the firm as either a provider in this area or a provider of note in your geography or a respected source of people you serve on boards with, even though they have nothing to do with your issue, but you respect them. You've created awareness and visibility of the firm, the brand. Business development cannot be delegated to other people who are experts at SEO and website design and PR, right? BD has to be done by the lawyers. The difference is marketing creates awareness and visibility. Business development is about getting to a decision, right? So if we are hosting a breakfast briefing for HR managers talking about new employment laws every January, what happened last year? What do we have to focus on this year as you update your employee handbooks? We fill the room with HR managers. Marketing can help create the awareness and fill the room. But the lawyers who go back to their desk and say, I hope they call, are missing an opportunity, right? Everyone who attended has a clear reason to take time out of their day and attend and learn something. So what is our follow-up strategy? Is it a call? Is it a letter? Is it writing several blog posts that tie further into individual industries and make these from bigger concepts about all businesses in the state to very specific niches? What are the things the lawyers are doing specifically to have a conversation, understand the client's needs, and get them to say, yes, we'll hire you, or no, you're not the right fit? A no is a good answer because every no gets you to a yes. Lawyers don't want to think about this in terms of sales, and nor do I think they should be thinking about this, at least in the traditional way we think of sales. The sales that you and I know is consultative selling. What's your problem? Let me see if I can understand it. Let me size the situation, compare it to my experience. If I can help you, great. Here's how I can help you. If I'm not the right answer for the problem you have, let me see if I can find some people in my network who can help you, and then we'll move on, right? But simply saying, hi, nice to meet you. I'm going to send you a pitch, and I'm going to mail it to you, and then I'm going to email you every week for 9 months until you just stop responding to my emails, right? Pitch and wait, pitch and wait, pitch and wait. But meeting someone saying, hey, let's have a quick conversation. The reason we were both at this conference is because we both needed to learn something. I was speaking, you were attending. Well, let's have a quick chat. What's the business issue you have? Talk it out. If there's something there, then say, let's have a little deeper conversation. Let me bring in one of my colleagues who's an expert in this, and let's see, we better understand your situation. Then we'll propose how we could solve this for you, right? Do that. Ask some questions. Propose something. They'll say no. They say yes. Sometimes they say no, but they're like, wow, you really impressed us. We never would have thought of you. But this is too high risk for our organization to try a new firm. But you know what? You're on our short list. The next one we can offer that is safe enough for us to test you, we'd love to give you that chance. Right. So anyway, the point is business development is lawyer action. They've got to take action on their own, and not all of them are good at it. And so they just sit back and say, let the marketing create the awareness and hopefully the leads come in. And you know what? It works. Sometimes clients just call out of the blue and say, I'd like to hire you. I saw this article you wrote. So that's cool. But those who can get out there, attend conferences, be at the client's offices, doing those things, they can be more effective. I will say that everyone can be effective. Now, sometimes there's lawyers you don't want going out there in the public and shaking hands and kissing babies because they leave their office, they're going to scare the children. But there's a role for everyone. And there's a great consultant, Tim Leishman out of Toronto, who wrote about 20 years ago, maybe even longer, a description of the different kinds of lawyer personalities and how they can best contribute to growing the firm's business. And some are speakers, some are handshakers, some are sitting back and being the brain surgeon, but there's a different role for everyone in both marketing and business development.
Right. That can inevitably contribute to the success of the firm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone in their own way, right? Just because the named partner is someone who is charming and can walk into a room and leave with 4 business cards doesn't mean we can all do that. Most of us can't do that. Don't measure by the success or the approach of the best rainmaker.
Right.
Think about this as a problem solving. How can I help my clients solve problems? And how do you put yourself in a position where they want to ask you questions about how to solve that problem? It's the easiest sell to make.
And I'm sure in your business, in your line of work, you often see the firms and the individuals who make up the firms who know their roles and do them well are typically the most successful.
Yeah, right. And so you don't have to be everything, right?
No.
I don't know if you're a baseball fan, and I don't like to use trite sports analogies, but it sort of fits. They call a well-rounded baseball player a 5-tool player.
Yeah.
Now, what are those tools? Well, I don't know. That's scratching, that's chewing gum, that's chewing tobacco. I don't know. Whatever the 5 things are, they can do them all well. Most people can't do that.
No.
But that's the whole nature of a law firm is we often have one-sided comp plans that expect us to do everything well, or we have to emulate the founders who did everything well and they're brilliant. But most of us have a niche or a couple areas. And if we can focus on those, it really does take a village. You could not have a firm of only rainmakers, just like you couldn't have a firm of only people who do the work with no one winning the work.
Right.
Although there are quite a few of those who are resting on those institutional clients brought in decades before. One of these days, one of those clients is going to move on and it's going to put the firm in a world of hurt. It's a recurring pattern.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about the future of legal services, which I'm sure is a topic you have to address constantly, especially with the advent of AI and where technology has taken us today. So we're sort of at a real turning point as far as the legal industry is concerned. I'd love to hear your take on where you think traditional law firms, are headed. Are we going to see the traditional law firm continue on for a period of time? Or are we going to see some disruptors rewrite the playbook on how to practice law?
Yeah, so change is coming, but I think in a positive way. It's good for the profession. It's good for the buyers of legal services who are woefully underserved.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just innovation for innovation's sake, but the more innovation we embrace and realize that it benefits the profession, it benefits the buyers and the lawyers, the more we'll embrace it and do more. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It's good. Mm-hmm. But here's what's going to happen. And so we see the biggest firms, the mega firms are getting bigger and bigger. I wouldn't say it's against all reason. It's against a lot of economic reason, right? Just getting bigger shouldn't be a reason to get better because it doesn't create necessarily economies of scale.
Right.
So 2,000 lawyer law firms merging, you still only have a handful of people in HR who are redundant, right? You can't have 2 CIOs, you can't have 2 CMOs, and you can't have 2 CFOs, but you can have a country CFO and so on. But the point is that the typical economics of a business combination or a merger like that doesn't really lend itself to saying, why are they so successful? But we have to look at the psychology, right? The premier clients, premier companies want to work with the biggest brands because they believe they are a big brand themselves. And so that's why the biggest firms continue to have trajectories that sort of outpace the rest of them. Mm-hmm. That's an anomaly. I'm not saying it's not sustainable. What I'm saying is it's not a model that your average 86 lawyer firm should emulate. Should we grow to 2,500 lawyers? Well, you might grow to 250 lawyers and that might blow you up and you go out of business. So what is happening below that level? Well, there's still a flight to quality. The clients are pushing to say, I want to pay for value. If you can demonstrate to me why your quality is different than someone down the street, then we'll use you. We'll be happy to use you right away. For others, we'll get you on that short list and we'll test you and bring you up. But keep in mind, the advent of procurement and legal operations on the law firm, law department side is not a bad thing. The business people involved is a good thing because they're brand agnostic. So a
Right.
procurement person who says, I don't really know all the brands. I didn't grow up in this field. 10 years ago, I was in a finance role, and now I'm in procurement, but I've been doing legal procurement for 5, 6, 7 years. I'm seasoned, but I'm still not impressed. I don't know the difference between Skadden and Skarden, and so whatever your firm names, it doesn't matter to me. What I want is, here are how the metrics we use to measure quality.
Mhm.
Here's our service standards, responsiveness, or how we budget, or how we manage a scope change. Here's the characteristics of this matter. Tell me how you can do this work at the right price, at the right quality, because you've done it before. And those people are good for firms that are saying, hey, we have great lawyers. In fact, some of our best lawyers came from bigger firms. So they're easily the equal of these big firm lawyers, but we wouldn't otherwise be able to get a chance. Guess what? With this sort of brand agnostic group helping to assign the work appropriately, but again, not everything. So let's say there's sort of segmenting your buying, right? There's just as we do when we go to the store. Oh, I want a gallon of milk. Well, unless I want the almond milk, I'm just going to grab a gallon of milk. But I might want the really high-end coffee, right?
Right.
I'm going to pay top price for the high-end coffee, but whichever butter, I don't care. It doesn't matter. The same thing here. They're saying for some things, we have to have the best. For others, we're happy to find regional firms, local firms. And so there's a lot of mid-sized firms or small firms that can be very successful because they've got a very specific area, a niche. They're good at it. They know how to demonstrate that they're good at it. They know how to budget for it. They know how to use project management to clearly convey to the client that we've been here before.
Right.
And they're going to be successful. Now, are they going to be successful in all of the areas of their practices? Probably not. Right? But they're not there now.
Right.
And part of that's purposeful, right? Like we have cyclical and counter-cyclical practices. So at any one time, some are hot and some are not. But if by and large they alternate so that we have a good mix, we're going to be successful. But the ones that are not going to be successful are those who say, you know what, let's just keep doing what we're doing for as long as we can. You will be successful for a while. And
Until you're not.
yeah, the law firm's not going away. Drawing a trite analogy back to the 1800s, yeah, everyone couldn't own a car right away, which meant if you were the person who owned the stable, sooner or later, you're the last stable for horses being transported from your farm to town so you could go shopping. And eventually, and you were making a lot of money because there was no one else.
Right.
The point is that there's a lot of opportunity for law firms that are adaptable, take on innovation, and particularly use project management, process improvement, and strategic pricing to convey their expertise. And they'll do fine. But those who say, you know what, let's just see if we can find dumb clients who are willing to spend top dollar for our rates, which are based on how long we've been out of law school, not the value of the services we offer. And you'll find dumb clients all the time, but not enough to sustain you at the same pace we've seen in the past.
Okay. Let's look into the future. Let's go 10 years, 15 years into the future. What do you think the structure of a practicing law firm will look like? Will it look more like it does today, or a different innovative model sort of rule the day?
Well, some of this is inherently unpredictable. There's a lot of private equity sniffing around. Both Australia and the UK decades ago embraced the notion that a law firm could be owned by private investors, and it has not submarined the legal profession. And they put in safeguards, of course, just in case. And of course, the accusation is, well, those private equity people, they're profit motivated. They're not focused on the client's needs. And out of the other side of their mouth, lawyers are saying, and so I'm billing you by the hour for something I've done 10,000 times because that's the way I make money, even though I could probably give you a flat fee and know exactly, how to do this. So clients are really not in the forefront. I do believe the future will hold different forms of law firms. So there will be corporate law firms, even here in the US at some point. I mean, you're sniffing around it in Arizona. We did sniff around it in Utah and California and got away from it. Canada's been talking about it for a decade. Will we have corporate owned or investment in law firms? Yes. But will it take over? The private equity are going to want to talk to the biggest law firms that are already doing well. They're not going to want to talk to the 100-lawyer law firm probably, unless they have a whole different strategy of trying to go local, which isn't usually their model. But I also think we'll still have partnership models, but those partnership models are going to embrace the best of the innovation we see. So you're going to see AI and technology. You're going to see different leverage models. You're going to see a whole number of lawyers who say, you know what? I don't want to be an owner. I don't want to do that lifestyle, but I'm a great lawyer and I know my worth and I'm going to do my work. I'm going to punch a clock. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go home and coach baseball. And nothing wrong with that. We've shed too many great lawyers because they didn't fit this model that everyone sooner or later has to be an owner.
Mhm.
Not true. So I think we'll embrace far more of that, which is good for the profession, good for the individuals, good for the mental health, but also the different processes. They're all going to be used by the law firms because if the clients buy them, it's because it serves the need. And the second biggest group of buyers of these innovative service offerings is the law firms because it
Right.
could reduce their costs of delivery. So I think we'll see a different world in that regard, but I also think the same old law firm billing by the same methods will still exist 10 years from now and probably for all time because there is a need for that, but it doesn't apply equally across the board in the way it used to.
Okay. Finally, what is one mindset shift that you think would make just sort of overall, I mean, generally speaking, across the legal landscape, would make law firms more competitive?
It's a trite phrase and I didn't come up with it, but the actions of the partner have to change. Right? What's good for the partner has to be good. What's good for the partnership. Right. So the shareholders of the firm can't operate in a way that benefits them individually, but harms the firm or at least does nothing to advance the interests of the firm. And that'll create two things. One is it creates an environment where if you're a lone wolf and there are a lot of them, great, but this isn't the place for you. This is a place where we specifically work together because we know that's the greatest outcome we want. Even if sometimes we're giving up a little bit of revenue or profit as a consequence, it's the way we want to insulate against risk and come together and have the culture we want. So that will align the mindset of people and limit the number of rogues who are operating as silos. Secondly, what's good for the firm is not something that many firms define. We talked earlier about setting strategy. We're not really thinking about what's good for the firm. We're thinking about what do we have here and what's growing at a fast clip that we can go do better. Well, if we say what's good for the firm, it's about minimizing our risk, finding opportunities. It's institutionalizing our clients. It's creating good succession plans so that we don't surprise clients at the last second with your favorite guy is retiring. It's things like that that change the whole nature of how we operate because it's now the firm is what we're trying to protect, not the individual.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it serves the client's needs, whether it's small individuals or it's large companies. The vast majority of people or organizations that need legal services today are priced out of them. And so access to justice benefits from law firms that realize that the best way to profitability is to please the clients over and over and over and over again. And there's a lot of clients willing to spend money, but there are fewer and fewer of those willing to spend outlandish money for simple things.
Right. Again, as a layperson and as a business owner, a pretty simple concept, but yeah. Tim, what's the most common leadership gap you see in managing partners?
Yeah, managing partners in most law firms are very smart people, but they earn their role through relationship capital, not through management acumen. The true test of a manager in a law firm having good management chops is the first time we ever hear of one being recruited to go to the firm across the street to become a manager rather than become a lawyer. And that hasn't happened in my knowledge. No managing partner has ever been recruited in the same way that a CEO is often recruited, even to jump ship to a different industry because of their general management skills. That isn't happening yet.
Okay. You know what? That thought's never even crossed my mind, but actually it's a really interesting point. Okay. Tim, why do so many law firms appear successful on paper, but they still continue to struggle with profitability?
Well, I think that's your answer is inherent in the question. We focus on the inputs. How much revenue can we generate? And that's based typically on billable hours, which is a function of how many people we can have billing a lot of hours at the highest rates. And that generates a top line revenue. But what we take home is profits. So a lot of the efforts we put forth to generate that revenue or how we service that revenue stream is inefficient and costly. And therefore, despite all that effort, we end up with less profit to share. So I think the greatest opportunity for a law firm that feels successful but isn't actually successful is to rethink the methodology. Are we focused on the inputs or should we focus on the outputs?
Is there a shift in mindset that consistently helps firm move from good to great?
Yeah, to really change the operational approach that's in place today, it really requires the owners to sit down and revisit their values. What do we care about? Not do we like this person running this department or do we like this practice group? Or it's thinking about as owners, what do we care about? What kind of culture do we want? what kind of decisions should we be making? Are they in the best interest of the firm? And so the saying I've said before, what's good for the partner has to be what's good for the partnership. If that mindset shifts, saying we value this as owners, and let's make sure that everything we do ties back to those values. It may sound a little bit new agey, but it really is the foundation for how to run a business. What do you want this business to look like? How do you want people to feel? What experience you want your clients to have? The economics are always secondary to that.
Okay. And finally, Tim, if you could assign one book to every law firm leader, what would it be and why?
Well, I had the good fortune of meeting and dining with David Maister, who is long retired, but he was a Harvard professor and studied professional services firms. He wrote multiple books. One was Managing the Professional Services Firm, but the one I would recommend of his is True Professionalism. It's really about how to be a lawyer, could apply to engineers or architects, but his focus was law firms mostly, really about what is the role of a modern partner in a modern law firm and what should their expectations be. But I'll give you a bonus one. Business development is hard because lawyers think of it as salesy. The book that changed my whole perspective when I was a young guy coming out of school in a sales role, selling technology to law firms, was a book called Non-Manipulative Selling. And it's just a different variation of the same old theme of consultative selling or solution selling. It's not, hey, do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? It's, what's your problem? Let me see if I can help frame and define your problem for you, quantify the impact if you don't do it right or don't fix it. And if I can help, great, let's find a way to work together. If I can't help, then I'm not going to try. I'm not going to force something on you. I need to move on, and you should move on. That approach, if lawyers understood that they're already fantastic problem solvers, that book would change their perception about what their role is in business development. It's identifying problems that you can solve rather than identifying people you can sell things to.
I like that. I like that phrase. All right, very good. Tim, thank you. This really, for me, and I believe for those who have the opportunity to watch and or listen to this, was a masterclass at what it means to actually run or manage a law firm, not just simply practice law. So for anyone who wants to connect with you or go deeper into transforming their firm, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
My website is bringintim.com. I'm at tim@bringintim.com, and I'm on all the social media. I'm always happy to chat with people about their specific issues. And if I can help, great. If I can't, I'm going to try to find someone who can help you. So look forward to speaking with anyone who has a particular challenge bothering them right now.
Great. Fantastic. Tim, thank you. So if you're ready to think like a CEO and not just a lawyer, this episode could absolutely be your blueprint. Subscribe and share The Legal Edge with a colleague who you think is ready for change. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.